the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of which would obviously be timekeeping. So we'll get on with that. So let's start with who's had chance to read. Where are we up to? Habit 5. Seek first,
I've almost
understand,
finished.
then be understood. Sorry?
Yeah.
I've almost finished chapter 5.
Right. Okay. Really?
Yeah, I have. And I started chapter 6, but I didn't get right through it.
Okay. We've got Jane joining us as well. Stan, how have you gone with it?
I read it a couple of months ago, but I didn't get a chance to go back again. I've been busy reading the Theory of 5.
Oh, yes. Okay, cool. Hi, Jane. Welcome back.
Hello, Tony. Hi, Carly. And Dan and V.
So, Jane, we're reviewing the habits of 7 habits of highly effective people. Is that a book you've read?
It sure is.
Aha, there we go. See, so we're up to habit 5 this week, which is part 3, public victory. Habit 5: seek first to understand, then to be understood. Now, do we need a bit of a recap at all, or are we all okay with what we've done so far?
I think your recap last week was awesome.
Thank you, V. I'll just mention what the habits were. Perhaps at least we can cover that, because I don't want to spend too much time on it. But because you can always go back and watch the other videos once I've put them up. But habit 1, well, the initial principle was introducing the book was paradigms and principles, starting working from the inside out. So always that we work on ourselves first, because that's what he says later. In fact, in this chapter that I just read, is that it's we start from our center of influence, which we can influence ourselves. Then we have the center of concern, which is basically everything outside our personal control. That's, the world, the universe, people, Putin, all those sorts of things. The stuff that's going on in the rest of the world, we can't do anything much about that. We can hope to influence some people in our area of concern, but the main thing we can influence is ourselves in our center of concern, center of influence, sorry. So the 7 habits, he gives a bit of an overview on that, but we'll go into part 2 was private victory. So that was saying, again, reinforcing this point that we can change it all from within. It starts with us being proactive, having goals, having a mission that we're working towards. Habit 2, beginning with the end in mind. So knowing where you want to get to, what you want to change in your life, and figuring things out for yourself about your long-term vision. Habit 3, putting first things first. So focusing on what's important, prioritizing, and rather than just randomly doing stuff that may not be getting you closer to where you want to get to. And it's very easy in this world of distraction and social media and internet and external noise to be distracted and not to focus on what's really important to you. Part 3, public victory. Key point there was that it's not about having victory over the public. It's about how you can become interdependent. So we've got the shift from being dependent as a child to independent growing up to interdependent, realizing that the best work we do or the best changes we can affect are when we collaborate with other people. So, the synergy concept, which we'll come to in habit 6, where the sum of all the parts is greater than each individual separately. So if we brainstormed on something, for example, we could come up with far more ideas than each one of us independently could on our own, because we would each think of something that might then start a creative spark in somebody else in the group, and then we build from there. And I'm sure you've all experienced that in business and in life. So habit 4 was a really key one. We spent a lot of time on that last week. It was a big chapter, and it was think win-win, the difference between working towards a solution where all parties come out as winners, where everyone gains something from the interaction, rather than what typically happens, well, a lot in society is win-lose. It's, you know, I win, I get what I want, but you lose because you have to give in to me. Or if you are the kind of person who likes being a doormat, you might operate on a lose-win basis where you allow everyone else to walk all over you because you're just happy that they're doing so. I don't know why you would be, but you know, there are those people who have that trait. Lose-lose is not a good one at all, obviously, because none of us want to walk away with us all losing. There is the other alternative though, and that is no deal. So that was where we could agree to disagree and accept that perhaps we just can't work this out and we have to not try to collaborate on whatever it is we're working on because we can't both win out of it. So then there's no point. So the biggest one obviously was win-win. If we can work out, although he did go on to say toward the end of the chapter, there may be certain situations where one of those other ones fits. Like, for instance, you might lose the battle to win the war, you know, or you might want to uplift your partner. So you agree to let them have a win and you consciously lose in the sense that you let them have their way because it's going to empower them or uplift them or put them in a better mood. I'm sure a lot of husbands do that on a regular basis. That old saying, happy wife, happy life. And a few wives obviously do it too. Just that I get, you know, a bit of a smile off everyone first thing in the morning. So yeah, anything else? That's pretty much where we're up to. We're coming up to seek first to understand, then to be understood. Anyone want to add anything to that, or any aha moments that they've had recently from going through this book so far? You throw it open to the crowd. Anybody? No? We're all going swimmingly. Okay, that's awesome. So last week we were trying to think of examples where we might think win-win, or we might change the way we're approaching something. Anyone had that experience this week at all? No, can't think of anything. If you think of anything, you know, because I put you on the spot, come back at some point and just stick your hand up or butt in and tell me what you've experienced. So we'll go on to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Principles of empathic communication. This was, I thought, was a really good chapter. And the reason why is so often in life, we diagnose before we prescribe. Well, sorry, we prescribe before we diagnose. So we give our opinion on things without really understanding the other person's perspective. You know, if somebody complains about something, there's a tendency to want to jump in. He gives some great examples in this book about discussions with his son, where the son is trying to raise something that he's unhappy with at school, and the dad's going, oh yes, you can tell me anything, it's all right, you know, go on, tell me. But then when the boy does try to explain himself and he's struggling to put it into words what he's feeling, the father is then kind of going, what do you mean you don't like school? You're having a hard time. Don't you realize the sacrifices we've made to put you through that school and blah, 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 blah. And because what we tend to do is we filter the world through our own perspective. We have two views of the world, ours and the wrong one. Everyone else is wrong, we're right, because that's the way we think, because that's what we believe, because that's what we've decided, because that's what we've been told all our lives. So we tend to think we know best, and anyone who doesn't agree with our opinion is obviously an idiot because they don't get what we're, why wouldn't they agree with us? Because we're always right. That's an extreme example, of course. I'm sure none of us are as extreme as that. But the point is that if we can try to step back for a moment and go, oh, hang on a minute, this person is not a stupid person. Well, they might be, but you know, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they've got a different opinion to me for a reason. Maybe they know something I don't. So what if I first tried to understand them and understand their perspective, why they've come to that conclusion, or why they think that way, or why they feel this about this subject, this particular subject, then maybe we can change our perspective a little bit. Maybe there's some new information that we don't have. But how often do we jump in with an opinion? And they say, you know, at dinner parties, don't talk about, was it politics, sex, religion? Because everyone's got strongly entrenched opinions on these topics. And yet, how often can we discover new things that we didn't know about because someone else introduces a new fact or a new update on a situation, a different angle that we hadn't considered? How silly do we feel then when we've been ranting our entrenched opinion at somebody, and then they go, "Oh, but did you know this?" And you go, "Oh, no, I didn't know that. Maybe I need to reconsider." Anyone ever had that experience? Not me, obviously. But because I'm always right, you know.
Isn't that called cognitive dissonance? When you have
Yes,
to change your belief about something.
I believe it is.
Mm.
Well done.
And some people still don't, even when they're faced with the facts.
Yeah, because you know, this, we said right at the beginning, there are multiple versions of the truth, because there's my truth and your truth and her truth, because we all have that our own version of the truth, because it's based on our preconceived viewpoints. And sometimes we don't want to give up that viewpoint, even if we're faced with new facts, because for some reason it suits us to hang on to that viewpoint. And this is where things like racism obviously come out, you know, and you know, firmly entrenched, not so politically correct viewpoints, you know. So and some of that can be obviously affected by our experiences. So, you know, if you've got someone who's been battered by people, I don't know, let's randomly select a country of origin. Let's say you've randomly been battered by people who are Afghan. Then any Afghan person you come up against in life, you're going to think, oh, I don't trust them because, you know, the previous guys that I met from there bashed me. So we form these kind of barriers, and I'm randomly picking that nationality. I don't know why it just popped into my head. I have no problem with Afghans, just to be, you know, clear on that. But if you had that experience, then you may have formed a viewpoint there, and that becomes fixed. And part of that's a self-protective mechanism. You know, if you see a group of young men walking down the street, do you carry on walking straight towards them, or do you cross the road, just in case things might turn nasty? You know, if you're a single female walking down the street at night, would it affect your actions? Would it affect your decision making? I, as a single bloke walking down the street at night, have done that, where I've crossed the road thinking, I'm not so sure about these guys. I don't like the look of them. I think I'll just play it safe and cross the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just self-protection, isn't it? But it's because you've got it locked in that, you know, oh, a group of guys walking down the street at night could be violent, could be problematic, especially if they're drunk and yahooing and look a bit dodgy. So all these things can come from our preconceived ideas. So he's talking about this. The single most important principle I've learned in the field of interpersonal relations, it would be this: seek first to understand, then to be understood. How many times do we sit there going, but it's my turn to speak. I want to say this. I want to contribute this to the conversation, but I've got to let this person finish talking about this. They're dribbling on about something, and I just want to say my bit. And you're actually listening, but you're not really listening, because you're really just in your head constructing what you want to say next. I'm sure none of us have ever done that, have we? Yeah. I highlighted this in orange. Communication is the most important skill in life. If we can't communicate, we're in trouble, aren't we? But very few people have had training in listening at all. And for the most part, their training has been in the personality ethic of technique, truncated from the character base and the relationship base absolutely vital to authentic understanding of another person. So we don't actually teach at school, for instance, how to listen to people effectively. Maybe that should be on the curriculum, huh? Your character is constantly radiating and communicating. From it, in the long run, I come to instinctively trust or distrust you and your efforts with me. So that old saying of what you are speaks so loudly I cannot hear what you say. You know how we talked about that in the earlier chapters about the importance of our character and our integrity and our consistency, I suppose, who we are, because our behavior and our actions then cause other people to form opinions of us. And so therefore, they're either going to trust you or not trust you. Of course, there are those people you might, like the Afghan example, there are people you instantly don't trust because of previous experiences, and they have to earn that trust. They have to win you over. So empathic listening, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak. Aren't those people annoying? They just don't want to hear what you've got to say. I love this example he gave here with a father once told me, I can't understand my kid. He just won't listen to me at all. Isn't that frustrating when people won't listen to you? Well, maybe you've got to listen to them first and then really understand them. So this is the point. All right, so we may be ignoring another person, not really listening. We may practice pretending, where we're going, yeah, but really inside we're just going, I've got something I want to say, so just hurry up and finish what you're saying so I can say my bit. We've got selective listening. What's that? You want me to do what? No, dishes, I didn't hear that, sorry. We've got attentive listening, where we're actually really there, we're present, we're actually really taking in what the other person is putting forward. And actually, I'll share something, because I had this experience yesterday, and it happens quite a lot in my household. I was busy working on the computer, focusing on something that required intense concentration. So I was working on this website and getting trying to create this form to go on my website. My wife comes in, sits next to me, and starts blurting on about something that's going on with a group of ladies that she's working with, oblivious to the fact that I'm intensely concentrating on what I'm doing. And so, as is often the case, I have had this experience where she starts sentences with, "You're not listening to me." That's a really strange thing to start a sentence with, isn't it? But anyway, in this case, she's blurting something, and I'm like, I'm hearing this noise, but I'm actually concentrating on this, and I'm going, hang on a minute. And then she goes, "Oh, no, it's all right. Sorry, I can see you're busy. I'll go away." And I went, "No, it's okay. Stop. This isn't that important, and I can break away from it." I was concentrating on it, which she obviously missed. How, I don't know. But I consciously then went, wait a minute. No, come back into the room. Tell me what you're going to tell me. I'm listening to you now. And I was looking straight at her and focused and attentive listening on what she had to say, because it was obviously important to her to tell me about this. So important that she didn't even notice that I was busy concentrating on something else. But how many times could we dismiss somebody or ignore what they're saying because we're busy thinking about a problem or a challenge that we're working through, and we've kind of not given that person our full attention? Something to consider. So that happened with me yesterday, but I fixed it because I stopped what I was doing and I made her more important than what I was doing. Brownie points for me. All right. Anyone that had any other experiences like that?
So much.
Yeah,
You
too
don't
many.
talk during the rugby, do you?
He even tells me a lot about what he's doing, and so I'm like trying to listen as little as possible, and just like listen for if there's like a name that I might need to remember for later or something. But most of it, just like, I just
You're
like,
losing the will to live.
so I'm getting different listening skills that aren't that really good listening.
I hope Kevin doesn't get to watch this recording then.
We won't tell.
That's all right.
Don't mention rugby and he won't be interested. It's okay.
Thank you, Coralie, for that confession. I do find when I start talking about soccer, Joe's eyes glaze over. But then she has certain topics like epilepsy that she talks about, and some of the ketosis stuff kind of loses me sometimes. But there we go. We've all got our areas of interest that may not be of interest to the partner. We have to recognize that sometimes and maybe dial it back a little bit. Sometimes you're just so excited about something, you've got to tell someone that they're gonna hear it, whether they like it or not. This is an interesting point. Empathic listening is, in and of itself, a tremendous deposit in the emotional bank account. So this is how we build trust, isn't it? How over time how often do you hear that saying about marriages that have broken up? My wife just didn't understand me, so I left her. Or my husband didn't understand me, so I left him. So where does that come from? It comes from this thing of not really listening to people, not really trying to understand why they're feeling what they're feeling and why they're expressing themselves a certain way. And very often that can be because the person struggles with communication. They may feel things but can't explain why they feel how they feel. So if we struggle with communication, if we can't express it, how do we expect another person to understand what's going on with us? So communication really is the most important key, isn't it? Most important aspect of interpersonal relationships. So, and he talks about psychological air. If all the air was suddenly sucked out of the room you're in right now, what would happen to your interest in this book? You wouldn't care about the book. You wouldn't care about anything except getting air. Survival would be your only motivation. But now that you have air, it doesn't motivate you. This is one of the great insights in the field of human motivation. Satisfied needs do not motivate. It's only the unsatisfied need that motivates. Next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival. To be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, to be appreciated. Anyone ever dealt with complaints?
I'm sorry, ever dealt with what?
Complaints. Ever been in a service industry position in some form where you've had to deal, or in a position of authority and you had to deal with somebody complaining? What's the key?
I remember dealing with an accounting client with my old work, and he had a really bad reputation throughout the firm of the way he spoke to people. He was quite rude and quite arrogant, and he was rabbiting on about something to me, and I told him what actually happened and what he actually needed to do in a way that somehow he listened and it solved his problem. And then I said, is there anything else? And he said, no. Just kind of, but I guess he did kind of, he was being heard, and I created the solution for him. And for some reason, I don't know why other people didn't do it, but I think they just kind of namby-pamby to him. So I guess there's a way to actually, you can't just agree with someone and expect that to solve or create a solution. It's actually, conflict isn't a bad thing. Conflict is often where the solution comes from. So I think that's my point.
Well, you've made some great points there, V, which he does actually cover in I think either in this chapter or the next one, that we should embrace the differences between us. If we all thought exactly the same, we all came from the same perspective, we would never learn and grow, would we? Because we need other people's different perspectives to challenge us to improve. And there was something else there that you picked up on, And I think that was that you made the effort, or at least you gave the impression. So you talked about you could be pretending to listen, or get paying, like you said he was rabbiting on, or he's dribbling on about something, but obviously you heard enough, or you were attentive enough to pick up on the key points of why he was feeling what he was feeling.
Yeah, actually, so what he was doing was being quite insulting, but I picked up on what the actual problem was through what he was saying, right, and ignored the insults.
Brilliant, because that also comes up in the next chapter. Don't take it personally. They are very often, the person is venting. They're appearing to have a go at you, but really they're just oozing frustration that things are not going their way, or that they're not feeling understood or heard or vindicated or validated. So whereas if you're taking the effort to listen and you're really paying attention, you're making them feel that they're heard, that they're understood. And then when you've come up with a solution that actually worked for the guy, he really felt understood, because you've given him the solution that he was looking for. But all these other idiots that he deals with, they don't understand him.
They were taking it personally, so they couldn't help him.
And it's easy to do that, isn't it? Someone comes in with a bolshy attitude. Where'd that come from? Bolsheviks, I suppose. Someone's like hostile or aggressive. Because I used to do this in the service desk in retail all the time. The best thing you can do is just listen to them and let them speak, let them vent, let them rant. And you go, I understand. Tell me more about that. Because the fact that you're listening immediately diffuses the situation. Well, not always, but it certainly can help a lot. Because suddenly, instead of being met, because we tend to meet people's attitude with where they're at. So if they're angry and aggressive, it's kind of a human instinct almost to counter that, to be angry and aggressive back. But if instead you can go, why are you being like that? Tell me what's got you so upset. And then going, I understand how you feel. If that had happened for me, I would probably feel the same way as you. That was an old insurance sales technique we used called feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. If that had happened to me, I would have felt the same way too. But I found that when I did this, I got this outcome. So it's a simple technique, but it really works powerfully in especially in dealing with conflict resolution. So thanks, Fee. That was great observations. Well, he goes on to talk about this situation with a guy that he had a conflict with, and he just said to the man, "Let me see if I really understand what your position is and what your concerns about my recommendations really are. When you feel I understand them, then we'll see whether my proposal has any relevance in that." So if you're proposing something and someone's objecting to it, or they've got a problem with it, find out what really is going on. What's their real objection? Not just, their reaction, because very often that's not the real issue. You've got to go deeper than that. So he says in this chapter, you've got to make an effort to understand people. You've got to dig a bit deeper and really listen and ask more questions. Because when you're speaking your opinion, you're not learning anything. But if you're asking them for more information about why they think that, why they feel that, then you're going to learn more about it. Then you're going to be in a better position to deal with it. Anyone disagree with that? Anyone want to add anything to that? So that's diagnose before you prescribe. You wouldn't have any confidence in a doctor's prescription unless you had confidence in the diagnosis. That's an interesting one after what we've just been through with COVID and everything, isn't it? Anyway, moving on. The amateur salesman sells products. The professional sells solutions to needs and problems. So that ability to listen is one of our great sales skills, is that we first have to understand what are the customer's needs. What is it that is going to really help them move forwards? If instead you're just trying to sell them a product, without really understanding what their needs are. You might be like he said somewhere else, putting the ladder up against the wrong wall. You could be trying to sell them a solution to a problem they don't actually have. They may have a different problem, or you know, the product that you're selling might still work for them, but you're trying to sell them a solution to problem A when they're really concerned about problem B. Maybe it satisfies both A and B, but you're dribbling on about A and missing the point that they're really concerned about B. Hope I explained that all right. So before we listen, we tend to listen autobiographically. In other words, we think about things based on our experiences and our opinions and our beliefs. But if instead, let's just analyze what's going on there. This is typically what we do is we evaluate. First of all, we either agree or we disagree. We probe, but we ask questions from our own frame of reference. We advise, which is where we give them counsel based on our own experience, or we interpret. We try to figure people out. We try to explain their motives, their behavior based on our own motives and behavior. So how many times do you hear people go, oh, if I were you, I wouldn't be doing that. Yeah, but you're not me. Of course you wouldn't be doing that. You're not me. It's true though, isn't it? We can easily, we jump to give an opinion based on what we think, but we don't know what that person knows that may be different to us. Because that's a natural thing to do. We say, oh, well, our view of the world is right, so let's give opinions, let's give advice based on our experience and our view of the world. But they might have a different view. They're going through a different situation to what you are, and they're feeling differently about it. So first of all, you've got to get into what's happening with them, not what's happening with you and what you did last year and how you dealt with that when you were younger. That's a common one, isn't it? Or when I was a lad, I used to do this. You know, that's got no relevance to what's going on with this person right now. Especially true of parenting issues, isn't it? So he talks about instead the skills, the tip of the iceberg of empathic listening involve 4 developmental stages. The first and least effective is to mimic content. All right, but you're repeating things. So he gives this example where he's talking to his son, right? Boy, Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds. So he mimics it. You've had it. You think school is for the birds. So you're repeating their words back to them. That's a great way to start with, to make people feel like you're trying to understand them. If you're repeating back what they said using their words, all right? The second stage of emphatic listening is to rephrase the content. So when he goes, boy, Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds. You don't want to go to school anymore. So there's a rephrasing there, but it's subtle, but it changes, but it's still showing that I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. The third stage brings your right brain into operation. You reflect feeling. Boy, Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds. You're feeling really frustrated. You're not paying as much attention to what he's saying as you are to the way he feels about what he's saying. The fourth stage includes both the second and the third. You rephrase the content and reflect the feeling. So when he says, boy, Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds. You're really frustrated about school. You could either say it as a statement or you can ask it as a question, depending on how you use your inflection there. But frustration is the feeling. School is the content. You're using both sides of your brain to understand both sides of his communication. Now, what happens when you use fourth stage empathic listening skills is really incredible. As you authentically, and that was a point that V made that I wanted to come back to, authentic, because you said something there about if you're not really listening to the person with the right intent or the right reasons, they'll pick up on that. If you're just sort of paying lip service to or pretending to listen, they'll pick up on that vibe. So you have to be authentic. As you authentically seek to understand, as you rephrase content and reflect feeling, you give him psychological air. You also help him work through his own thoughts and feelings. So sometimes people that have, especially with complaints and so on, they have this frustration, but they haven't really figured out why they're so angry about it or what's going on that's really got to them. But letting them talk, they might come to that conclusion themselves. And I used to have that. I remember on the service desk, people would come in really angry, and by being practicing these things without even realizing I was doing it back then, but this is what I did, is followed those stages. I didn't know about stages, I just did it intuitively. But then I would find that the person would just calm down, and they'd actually themselves would go, oh, I'm probably overacting a bit to this, but you know how annoying it is when you go into the shop and you buy this thing, and by the time you get it home, you've driven all the way home and it doesn't work, and then you've got to drive all the way back to the shop again, and it's just a waste of my petrol and my time. Sure, I understand. I'd be upset about that too. Let's see if we can find a solution for you. What would make you happy? What would you like? So you've reflected back what they're saying, and you've empathized with them, and you've connected at their level, at where they're at. So I like this. It opens a soul to soul flow. That was a great line. He's not thinking and feeling one thing and communicating another. He begins to trust you with his innermost tender feelings and thoughts. So in this case, boy, dad, I've had it, school is for the birds, means I want to talk with you to get your attention. I want you to understand. You're really frustrated about school. That's right. That's how I feel. I sure am. It's totally impractical. I'm not getting a good thing out of it. You feel like school's not doing you any good. Let me think. Is that what I mean? Well, yeah, I'm just not learning anything that's going to help me. I mean, look at Joe. He's dropped out of school and he's working on cars. He's making money now. That's practical. You feel that Joe really has the right idea. So you listen to these examples that he gives. He really guides the person through from sort of feeling frustrated and overwhelmed and all those sorts of feelings to actually clarifying what's important and what's not. So by the end of it, he talks the guy right into, look, I'm really worried about the future. Listen, you won't tell mum, will you? You don't want your mother to find out. Well, not really. And then because he hasn't sort of forced his opinion, well, of course I'm going to tell mum or anything. He's like, let it dawn on the kid that, well, you're probably going to tell your partner, aren't you? Oh, okay, I guess you can tell her. She'll probably find it anyway. Look, I took this test today, this reading test, and Dad, they said I'm reading on a 4th grade level. 4th grade, and I'm a junior in high school. So this is what had really got to him, the kid in this situation, was that he'd had a bad test result, and it has filled him with all this doubt and concern about whether he's wasting his time being at school or not, and all this sort of stuff. So he wouldn't have got to that if he hadn't have been empathically listening to his son and allowing him to kind of vent and probing deeper. And that's what happens this is why coaching is so great. When you're working with people and you're there for them, you let them speak. And very often then the initial surface problems that are masking what's really going on kind of fall away. And as they trust you, they actually spill the beans on what's really bothering them. And then you can help them find solutions to it. Does all that make sense to people, or does anyone disagree or want to add an example of anything they can think of that's where this has happened to them?
There's too many. Examples of actually thinking it's like, actually, I didn't actually dig down. I didn't try to find what the real problem was.
But you know what? That's a good thing, like that you're realizing that, because this is part of what this book is designed to do, is to get us to reflect, because none of us are perfect, very few of us anyway, that we need to look at, where did I go wrong? Because that's how we learn and grow, isn't it? We go, hang on, I didn't get the outcome that I wanted there. This person's walked away angry with me or something, or my partner's upset with me. What could I have done differently there? How could I have handled that differently? Could I have said something different? How did I actually behave? Did I really listen to them? Or did I just dismiss them? Or was I so busy trying to put my own opinion across that I didn't really understand what they were trying to say? So that's how we all learn and grow. We're all a work in progress. And that's the great thing about this book, is it will make you go back and think about examples from your past, even from childhood. You go, wow, I really stuffed that one up, didn't I? So there you go.
I think it all really goes right back to the beginning of childhood, and that's what we teach children is they please us or they don't please us, and we let them know which behaviors we approve of and which we don't. And so it all comes down to this judgment, and then we're trying to prejudge so we can make mum happy or whatever. So we want to know, we know what we know and we know what mum told us, so we'll do this thing this time. And then we grow up like that, and we're all assuming what everyone else is thinking, or I am. I'll speak for myself. I assume that I know what other people are thinking based on my own experience, and I can be way off, or most of the time I'm roundabout right. But yeah.
So what am I thinking, Coralie?
Thinking, oh, is that a good point? Maybe a bit of it is.
I was actually agreeing with you. See, there you go. That's great. That really is so true, isn't it? We're a lot of our framing of things, does go back to those little voices we remember from our parents telling us things of how things should be. And they were humans too. They got things wrong as well. So but our heroes, and we start with our parents as our heroes, unless we're in a battered environment or something. Most of the time we do think of the lessons that we got from our parents, but then as we go into independence stage, we start to challenge some of those things. And certainly teenagers know far more than their parents, obviously. and then they grow up a bit older, and then as they grow older, suddenly their parents seem to gain wisdom. It's an incredible thing, isn't it? And then as we mature even further, we start reflecting on what our parents said to us, and were they right about things, and have we challenged that enough? And we find our own way, but we also are affected and influenced by our interpersonal relations with other people we come into contact with. So our experiences, of course, are different to our parents' experiences, and we're in a different era. We've got a world of technology that they didn't have, and so on. So there's a lot of things changing all the time. And so when parents give this opinion based on what they would have done when they were at school 40 years ago, it's not relevant, or as relevant as they think it is to what that child's going through today. Maybe 40 years is a big gap. But yeah, we do look at things through those filters. The more we examine those filters and why we think what we think, the more we open ourselves up to alternative and paradigm shifts. I love this point, and I highlighted this in orange here. By seeking first to understand, this father has just turned a transactional opportunity into a transformational opportunity. So whereas the kid would have gone, Dad, the school's for the birds, and he'd go, what are you talking about? School's brilliant. I didn't get where I am today without getting results in school and getting grades and all this. That would have been a transactional discussion. He says one thing, nobody gets a shift in opinion because the father's still entrenched in his opinion, the boy's entrenched in his concerns, and no one wins. But instead, by understanding his son and engaging with him and getting him to talk and open up, he's had the opportunity to transform the son's feelings about school and why it's worth him persevering and, to have another go and so on. So we can influence people the more we work on our ability to listen and understand them. That's just my opinion. And I think it might be Stephen Covey's as well. This is interesting too. There are times when transformation requires no outside counsel. Often when people are really given the chance to open up, they unravel their own problems and the solutions become clear to them in the process. As I was just saying about coaching, just by being with people and attentive, how often do people really listen to you? How often are people right there focused on you, wanting to understand what your problems and concerns are and how you feel about them? This is why coaching is so effective, or counseling, or going to see a shrink or whatever, because, or a Reiki teacher, because they are there for you in a way that most people aren't. So then you can vent or rant or whatever you want to do. You can get it out of your system, and in the process you kind of go, well, hang on, maybe I'm looking at that from the wrong perspective. Maybe I'm thinking about it like this when I should be thinking about it like that. And you do come up with your own solutions. But the coach or the psychologist or the counselor has given that person, as he calls it, the psychological air, the space in which to actually figure things out. And that's the power of collaboration, isn't it? The power of being there for other people. We might not get to that on our own because we get in these loops. I've got this problem, I can't see a way out of it. I've still got the problem, I still can't see a way out of it. And it just goes on and on and on. And maybe by talking it through with somebody else, sometimes you find your own escape from the loop. So obviously skills are important, skills of empathic listening. As I said, maybe it should be taught, but we need to have the skills. But let me reiterate, the skills will not be effective, takes V's point here, unless they come from a sincere desire to understand. People resent any attempt to manipulate them. So if they think that you're only listening so you can actually assert your viewpoint on them, then they'll get angry or, you know, not want to receive that information. But if they understand that you're listening with a view to understanding them, then they'll open up. So people are, even on a non-verbal level, they'll pick up on the signals that you're just trying to manipulate me, you're just trying to get your own way. No, I'm really trying to understand you. So tell me how you feel about this, really. Makes you think a lot about your relationships, doesn't it? And you know, things you, especially with your partner, was I really listening? Was I really trying to understand them? Or was I just waiting to speak and tell them how they're wrong and I'm right? And I love this point. Empathic listening takes time, but it doesn't take anywhere near as much time as it takes to back up and correct misunderstandings. So when you don't listen, you can pay the price. And both of you could pay the price too. People want to be understood. And whatever investment of time it takes to do that will bring much greater returns of time as you work from an accurate understanding of the problems and issues and from the high emotional bank account that results when a person feels deeply understood. How good does it feel when people really do understand you? They have listened to you and they get why you're angry about something, or you're upset about something, or even why you're overjoyed about something. You know, you want people to share in that. If they're just like, oh, I don't care, you know, you don't feel so good about it, do you? And as you learn to listen deeply to other people, you will discover tremendous differences in perception. Our perceptions can be vastly different, and yet we both have lived with our paradigms for years, thinking they are facts. Ooh. And questioning the character or the mental competence of anyone who can't see the facts. They're all idiots. They don't understand. Well, there's your bloke in your workplace, Fee. No one understood him. So they were all idiots, and he treated them as such. It's kind of sad though, isn't it, when you realize somebody's got themselves in that position where they just think no one's listening to them, and then they become angry, grumpy pains in the ass. It's powerful if you can convert that person, turn them around. It really is.
I've actually got a friend who's become quite a great whinger, and he doesn't actually want to hear solutions. He just wants to be heard. And
where in your life might you be exhibiting that trait or tendency?
Whinging and not being well. It's funny that that first listen to understand, first understand and then be understood. But the thing that I've found, which is something I'm contemplating how to fix, is that I will often be seeking to understand, and I don't get the opportunity to be understood because we're so focused on understanding the other person. So I don't actually get to speak because the opportunity kind of passes.
Are you setting up a lose-win situation there?
Yes. Yes. But I'm not sure how to change that without like stomping my foot and saying, hey, it's my turn now.
Well, you could try that.
or maybe the other person still has not felt understood. I don't know. That's something for me to contemplate.
Well, something you could practice, the techniques that he's just said there, by reflecting, by speaking back that person's words, and then going, you know, obviously every situation is different, so it's hard to be speaking generally here. But if you're saying to the person, let me see if I've understood you, what you're really saying is, you feel this because of that. Is that right? And so if you've clarified and they've agreed that that's how they are feeling and that's why they're feeling it, then you can go, so what I'd like to add to that is, you know, you could then sort of, by summarizing their situation, but you've got to get it right and you've got to come from sincerity. If you summarize their situation, maybe you'll open up the space, or you could even ask the question, would you be interested in hearing a possible solution that I might have?
Yes.
So by offering it as a, I'm not going to give you my opinion unless you want it. That's going to make them curious then, that you're taking it away. I'm not going to tell you, of course, unless you really want that. So they've got to listen to you then, haven't they? Because they want to know, what the solution is.
I'll get curious.
That might work. It's worth a try anyway. Just I'd say every situation is different. So I'm speaking generally there, but very often it's easy to do that, is to not be understood because you're so busy focusing on them and trying to understand them and let them have their way. You could potentially be setting yourself up for they win and you lose. And you want to get it so you both win. Obviously totally depends on the situation, what you're trying to achieve. Coralie, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, because that's what you're saying is still, that's you talking. But if, like with what V's saying, if you're listening, you're not talking because you're listening. So if you're to, it would be like, sometimes, not all the time, but you know, every situation is different, but it would be like you're interrupting them to tell them what they're thinking.
Not if you're following his recommendations in this chapter. So if you're feeding back their words, then you're not so much interrupting them as showing them that you are listening, that you are trying to understand them, and you're not talking at length. You're simply, like he said in the example there, with, you know, you think school is for the birds. So you've actually proven to them that you've heard what they've said. Yeah.
See, then, like if Kevin mimics me, I just want to smash him because that's
well, because is he mimicking you from the point of view of taking the mickey out of you, or is he actually really trying to understand you?
It's to prove to me that he's listening.
But you don't think he is, really. That's why
I think he just wants me to shut up so he can keep talking.
And so what do you do to change that? Sorry, B.
Well, I was just reading through, you know, and I get that. It's very easy to mimic someone and tell them, rephrase what they've just said. But understanding how they feel, that's the next level, is actually asking them how they feel, because then you actually do show authentic concern for them. And that's where and I'm thinking of this particular person that likes to whinge, but he actually can't express how he feels about it, because I've asked him how he felt about that, and then he just goes into blaming the other person for that's the way that they feel. But it's like, well, how do you feel? And it's the digging down to how they feel is how you actually demonstrate that you understand, or that you're trying to understand.
Yep.
And then they actually come to the aha moments. That's the transformational part, I think.
Yeah, so I'm going back to your example, Coralie, because V's absolutely right there. You do need to dig down into how they feel. But when you've had a long-term relationship like that, you're already, by the sound of that, you're already assuming that Kevin's not really listening to you. So that's your paradigm that's causing a blockage there straight away, because you're not giving him the benefit of the doubt that he might be trying to understand you. Am I right?
Let's make it about you.
Well, so sometimes by asking people, by the elephant in the room, okay, let me see if I've got this right. I'm trying to understand. What I'm picking up is you're saying that you this happens and you feel this. Is that right? So you can test your theories and they, oh no, that's not it, it's whatever. Well, yeah. I'm trying to understand. Tell me more about that. But if so you can go down rabbit holes and see where it goes, and if that's the wrong rabbit hole, then you go down the next one. You're not going to get it right all the time. But what he's saying, don't jump to a conclusion that they must be thinking or feeling this because they're thinking that, because that's how you would think and feel in that situation. You're trying to get to how they think and feel in that situation, which is different, because they've got a whole different set of experiences that they're basing it on. But that doesn't mean you can't explore. You can, because you're showing that you still, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding you. Tell me more about that. You know, like you're trying to dig down into what's really going on with them. Look, there's no right and wrongs. You can try different techniques, you can try different ways. The key point behind all this is that you actually genuinely, sincerely, authentically trying to understand them first. And then if you have a different viewpoint, if there's a conflict or a discussion or you're trying to work out a resolution of something, you may see it differently. Then it's your job to try to convey why you think and feel what you do, but you won't do that unless you understand them first. Otherwise you're coming at it from different reference points. Tony Robbins talks a lot about references. Your references are your experiences. You've read this book, they haven't. You know, you've opened up, you've been training yourself on empathic listening, they may not. You might be trying to understand people, they don't care about other people. You know, I'm generalizing here, but the people we're dealing with are all coming from different perspectives, different experiences, different training levels. You don't know what their background is. You don't know what you do in the case of your husband, obviously, but you know, in work situations or business situations, we're making assumptions a lot of the time. Or the key thing that we do a lot, all of us do, is if that were me in that situation, this is what I would be thinking and feeling. But it's not you in that situation, it's them. So did we understand you there, Coralie? Did we get to the bottom of your concerns?
Oh, well, you know, there's a lot. It's like with Kevin, we have every type of communication. You know, sometimes we do listen deeply and sometimes, probably most of the time, we don't. But yeah, but even like with that thing you're just saying with about, you know, I've read this book and you haven't, sort of thing. We can read the same book, but we're still going to get different stuff out of it. And that's why we have a group like this, isn't it? So we can all, you know, expand on what we get out of the book.
And we won't have time to go on to it today, but the next chapter, Synergy, will be talking about that, with embracing the differences and realizing that we can accelerate our learning, if you like, by listening more to other people, by collaborating, by getting different opinions, different paradigms to look at, different perspectives. Okay, this is interesting. Seeking to understand requires consideration. Seeking to be understood takes courage. Oh, V, what was that? Win-win requires a high degree of both. So bravely assert yourself sometimes if you need to. Yes, the Greeks had a magnificent philosophy which is embodied in 3 sequentially arranged words: ethos, pathos, and logos. Sounds like the Three Musketeers, doesn't it? Ethos is your personal credibility, the faith people have in your integrity and competency. It's the trust that you inspire, your emotional bank account that you've built up over time with, you know, the way you've been with people. Pathos is the empathic side. It's the feeling. It means you're in alignment with the emotional thrust of another person's communication. Logos is the logic, the reasoning part of the presentation. Notice the sequence: ethos, pathos, logos, your character and your relationships, and then the logic of your presentation. This represents another major paradigm shift. Most people in making presentations go straight to the logos, the left brain logic of their ideas. They try to convince other people of the validity of that logic without first taking ethos and pathos into consideration. Simple example, the salesperson: I've got this vacuum cleaner, it does this, this, and this. This is why you need this vacuum cleaner. It's awesome. Are they actually stopping to build any credibility with you? The ethos part. Are they empathizing, the pathos side of it? Are they trying to find out, are you really upset with your current vacuum cleaner? Do you think that a new vacuum cleaner would make you more house proud? Would people think more highly of you if they came to your house because it was clean? Those sorts of things. And then
They could start with, do you have carpet?
yes, that would be a good point. Okay, so give some examples: leadership styles, conscious of time, so speeding on. So this is habit 5, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. This habit lifts you to greater accuracy, greater integrity in your presentations. And people know that. They know that you're presenting the ideas which you genuinely believe, taking all known facts and perceptions into consideration. That will benefit everyone. It's powerful because it's right in the middle of your circle of influence. Many factors in interdependent situations are in your circle of concern. All those problems, disagreements, circumstances, other people's behavior. Can't change other people. If you focus your energies out there, you deplete them with little positive results. But you can always seek first to understand. That's something that's within your control. Powerful words. If you're not getting a resolution to a conflict, did you do what you can do, which is within your control, which is to seek to understand first, working from the inside out? Watch what happens to you. The more deeply you understand other people, well, this is interesting, the more you will appreciate them, the more reverent you will feel about them. And this is a great line: to touch the soul of another human being is to walk on holy ground. There is a great breakthrough and sense of elation when you thought you understood someone and you didn't at all, and you come to that realization, and then suddenly you have that aha shift and you see them in a different light, because suddenly you understand why they think and feel the way they do when you didn't before. Has anyone experienced that recently? It's a big shift. And he gives some good tips here. Go out with your spouse on a regular basis. Have dinner or do something together you both enjoy. Listen to each other. Seek to understand. See life through each other's eyes. There you go. Key to a happy marriage. In business, you can set up one-on-one time with your employees. Listen to them, understand them, or your customers. Set up human resource accounting or stakeholder information systems in your business to get honest, accurate feedback at every level from customers, suppliers, and employees. Make the human element as important as the financial or the technical element. I used to do that when I had probably about 15 staff working for me in my small business. I would have staff meetings and I would get them to open up, to express anything that was bothering them, to what could we do to change things, how could we improve them. And sometimes you can't, sometimes at least you can hear them, and then you can give a reason why we do something the way we do it, which might not be what they like, but at least they then understand the reasoning behind it. Or they might come up with something that you hadn't even thought about, and it might not even be that hard for you to change it, but suddenly you make them feel differently in the workplace because you've heard them, and then you've done something that you could have done but you didn't know about before. That can be quite powerful by giving people psychological air. When we really deeply understand each other, we open the door to creative solutions and third alternatives, not the either or situation, but the third alternative. Our differences are no longer stumbling blocks to communication and progress. Instead, they become the stepping stones to synergy. Dun, dun, dun. And there we have habit 5. Thoughts, people, because we're not going to have time to do habit 6 today. We're out of time, unfortunately, much as I'd love to carry on. Life gets in the way. We have other things to do. What do you reckon?
Big one. I feel like that needs to be a lesson, like a constant lesson and learning, even in school, but certainly perpetually, to check in how you're actually showing up in your conversations.
Good. I concur. I've realized I need to improve in that area too. I really have. When I've listened to that, and I thought, how many times am I busy trying to say something instead of really listening to the other person and letting them finish what they were thinking.
I think it's also important to realize that how much we text and message and email, and how important it is to actually have a face-to-face, at least on telephone, but preferably, you know, so you can see the other person and actually understand more about what they're saying.
It made me think a lot about family dynamics, and, you know, how, for instance, my brother is an ex-police inspector, and you have a conversation with him and you feel like you've been interrogated. And that's that police training, you know, because it's a series of questions that you feel like, hang on, I'm just being, and then you feel like there's a judgment coming with that as well. And then with my sister, she judges everything. She's got an opinion on everything, and will tell you whether you want to hear it or not. And it's always from a negative filter, you know. It's always, oh, I wouldn't be doing that. No, that's not a good idea. Why don't you do this? I didn't actually ask you, but but yeah, thanks for your opinion. Yeah, so it does this, a book like this, again, it makes you introspective, makes you think back through lots of different example situations in your life, and where other people exhibit these things that are wrong, but at the same time you realize your own stuff ups and your own things, and yeah, I could handle that situation a lot better if only I'd listened. If I'd really tried to understand that person, I might have seen things. They might still be wrong and they might still be an idiot, but maybe they weren't. Maybe it was me that was the idiot in that situation. How could we have got a win-win out of it? I read this book many years ago, and I think that's something I've always tried to absorb in. It stuck in with me, is to always look for the win-win, if you can, because if you win and they lose, you don't really win at all in the long run, especially in business, because it'll come back to bite you sooner or later, because they'll feel disgruntled that you got one over on them, or you won the contract, or you got things on your terms and not on theirs, and they're not happy, but they'll tolerate it, you know. Then you haven't really won at all. You've got to seek the situation where both of you feel like you're moving forwards and you've got a good deal out of it. And that was an interesting one, the no deal concept of, you know, if you really can't agree, then you're better to not try and collaborate on that issue if it's not going to work. And that can take some courage sometimes, you know. You think about what's going on the global stage. I don't know, where's the win-win in the Ukraine-Russia situation? challenging one, isn't it? And we're all thinking that Putin's a lunatic and he's completely mad and insane and all that in the Western world, and that there's people over in the Eastern world that think he's a hero and he's wonderful and he's right on the money. Why are they thinking that differently? What's going on there? What's the thinking behind it? What are the deep feelings that have caused such an extreme kind of action? Some things may be way too hard to figure out, I don't know, but you have to think surely there's got to be resolutions to conflict somewhere along the way. But clearly there's a dichotomy there. Is, you know, you're either thinking this way or you're thinking that way, and they're not coming together in how they can seek some kind of solution at all. And that could be catastrophic for the world in that situation. But in our day-to-day interactions, you know, how can we improve within our circle of influence? And that starts with us, from the inside out. Any other thoughts, people? How did you feel about that chapter? Strike a few chords, or? Yeah?
Yeah, it was a big one.
I thought it was. I thought we'd actually get through the synergy one as well, but clearly no. So next week we'll do the 7th habit, the synergy, and it is a shorter one. So we'll probably go on to doing a bit of a summary of the book as a whole as well, and what we thought about it and how we felt about it. And there was a little extra bonus chapter in my version. So chapter 7, or habit 7, is sharpen the saw. Oh, actually, so there's 2, sorry. Habit 6 is synergize, we haven't done, and habit 7 is sharpen the saw. So we'll see how we go. But there's also then there's a little bonus chapter called Inside Out again. We'll see how far we go. It's not as chunky. We'll definitely at least do synergize, and if we can, we'll do sharpen the saw as well. Thank you, people. Have an awesome week ahead. Think win-win and practice understanding people. And then being understood, V, don't forget that bit.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.